Kristen Poole. I'm the Artistic Director of the Sun Valley Center for the Arts.
And I'm Courtney Gilbert. I'm the Curator of Visual Arts here at the Center.
And we're here to talk about the current exhibition that's up at the Center called Forest, Foraging, and Fire. The Center organizes itself around exploration of big ideas that have relevancy and currency to not only the Wood River Valley community, but the region and the nation as a whole.
Kristen and I worked together to curate this exhibition. And as we selected the artists and the artwork that are on display, we wanted to get at a few key ideas. One, obviously, was the impact of fires on our community and on communities around the West, and the role of fire in helping maintain healthy forests. We wanted to get at the forest as a natural resource, not only in terms of wood, but what we've noticed as a resurgence in foraging. The third idea we really wanted to get at was the idea of the forest as a place of spiritual renewal and transformation.
Jerry Saylor is from Moscow, Idaho, and has been doing installations all over the Northwest for a long time. When Jerry did her research about the fires here in the Wood River Valley, she realized that many of us were not threatened necessarily by the fire itself, but that it was the smoke that was so affecting us and that so infects the environment. And she was really intrigued about the way the smoke travels and the heaviness and the density of smoke. So she created this installation in the gallery in response to those feelings about the Beaver Creek fire and about fire itself. One of the things that you need to take note of when you look at the piece is that right around the edge of the perimeter, she's put a little, she said, I'm not very hopeful, but I'm slightly hopeful, because when we walked out there, she saw the green emerging from the forest.
Another artist in the exhibition who's interested in the idea of fire is Shannon Durbin. And we have on display 3 watercolor paintings she made as part of a series of 10 that she called the Forest Fire series. She's based in Los Angeles and noticed that every fall smoke would come in and blanket the city. And it reminded her of growing up in Washington State, where she had read about a woman who started a major forest fire after making a campfire to burn her diary. And she was struck by, as she put it, kind of the enormous consequences of this one really personal gesture.
David Nash is probably the best known of all of the artists in the exhibition. His tools are not the typical woodcutter's tools or woodworker's tools. He uses chainsaws. The surfaces are rough and very sort of gritty. He's very, very interested in simple, organic form as well as the sort of primary forms, circle, square, triangle. He uses fire also in his work. For him, fire is both a way to inject some color and some intensity, but also symbolizes regeneration. Katherine Chalmers created 2 pieces for this exhibition. This long, narrow photography scroll is actually, you're only seeing half of it. It's a 20-foot long scroll that is really a collaboration that Katherine does with the ants in the forest at night. She's fascinated with the leafcutter ants. They're a very complicated society. They are farmers, they're fighters, they're hard workers. For Katherine, the relationship with the leafcutter ants and humans is really the thing that she's exploring. And one of the things that Courtney and I were intrigued with and why we included her work in the exhibition is because they speak to the whole organization of things in the forest that we don't see. And she talks about an inspiration for that being in the language of an Assyrian text that was 800 BC text that talked about our impulse as humans to colonize the earth. And if you look carefully at the scroll text, you can find the letters colonize the.
Bill Lewis is a painter who's based in Boise, Idaho, and he's made a bunch of different bodies of work about the human relationship to nature and how it's changed over the centuries. A few years ago, he made a painting of a taxidermied deer that was his brother's. He called it Stephen's deer, and he liked the painting, and he started thinking about taxidermy and what a funny thing it is that we take animals out of the forest after we've killed them, and then we stuff them and try to make them look as lifelike as possible before we hang them on our walls. There was a funny incongruity, of an antelope over a water cooler, for instance, and so he started a whole series called Fish and Game.
Spencer Finch is a Brooklyn-based artist who is really interested in notions of color and memory. And this piece called Thank You Fog is a piece that he did in the Sonoma forest. For 1 hour, he took a photograph every minute of a fog bank rolling through this particular forest in Sonoma County. And if you get close to the piece, you can really see how the fog transforms the forest.
Onna Schor is a painter who grew up in Germany but now lives in Seattle. Last year, she spent much of the summer of 2013 hiking through the Pacific Northwest, and what she was struck by was she kept coming across these enormous old growth stumps. And I think when we think about tree stumps, we think about trees dying, but what she saw were these stumps as grandmothers creating new life. Like many of her paintings feature these kind of ghostly images of children, they get at that feeling of the forest as a magical place of transformation and of mystery, but also the life cycle of the forest and our relationship to it as human beings through multiple generations. Erik Johnson is a photographer based in Seattle, and he was really struck by the forests in the Pacific Northwest that he had grown up with, particularly the role of the logging and the fishing industries in shaping those landscapes. We have on display two bodies of work that he's created. One is called Sawdust Mountain, and it's a look at the impact of logging and fishing on the Pacific Northwest. We also have photographs from a more recent body of work called the Mushroom Camps. A couple of years ago, Erik went into the forests of eastern Oregon and encountered these very remote, isolated camps that are occupied by kind of a mix of people from around the world who all go into the forest looking for mushrooms called matsutake mushrooms that are highly prized in Japan. And what's fascinating about this story is these people erect these kind of elaborate camps that they occupy for about 3 months, searching for these mushrooms, and every day the mushrooms that they collect are within 24 to 48 hours on a plane to Tokyo.
Obviously, everybody who lives here has a relationship with the forest, and this will give them an opportunity to explore that.